Bethel, a church beloved by many, despised by others, and at the center of many controversies. One phenomenon in particular has drawn the skepticism of many critics, the glory cloud. I have personally read and watched videos online of people who have never been to Bethel and certainly weren't there when the glory cloud happened, and yet claim it was all fake. So what I decided to do was go talk to some people who were there, who were in the room, and saw the glory cloud firsthand, and let you decide for yourself what to think after having heard their experience.
What's your name?
Jerry Aaronson.
Right. What do you do?
Well, I originally did all the electronics work for Bethel TV, kind of like a broadcast engineering kind of job, doing mostly wiring and making electrons flow and stuff like that.
So you worked on a whole bunch of the Bethel TV stuff in the sanctuary at College U.
Designed and built some things, and
at Bethel, of course.
Yeah,
we're talking Bethel.
I was working for Bethel TV when a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about happened, but then I went on later to start working for Bethel IT department, which where I kind of do some of the same stuff, but not really. I mean, we do, microwave antennas and kind of backbone stuff and infrastructure, wiring, that sort of thing. So.
Okay.
And I have a background in law enforcement.
How long were you a cop?
About 8 years.
Okay.
And so.
And then, when did you get hired at Bethel?
Oh gosh, 2007.
So you've been working
September 2007, I believe.
Ah, you beat me.
Yeah.
I was in December 2007.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just barely beat you.
Yeah, but you beat me.
Yeah.
Okay, so Glory Cloud.
Glory Cloud.
You saw it.
I did. I missed it most every time except for the last time.
Do you remember what year it was?
I don't. I'd have to go back and
yeah, I don't remember. My guess is like 2010 to 13 or something like that.
And the older you get, the harder it is to remember specific dates, just because it seems like things go by faster.
Well,
so it might seem like it was 2 years ago and it's been 15.
Do you remember, because it didn't go on forever, right? But it went on for like a little season of time.
Yeah, there was a little season of time when there was just, it happened a few times, and then...
Was it like months? I can't remember how long it was going on
I don't remember either.
So it wasn't just one time, though?
No. And originally, from my understanding, what I heard from Bill was that it actually started in the upper room.
Upper room.
That was the first time it was ever seen.
I know people who saw it in the great room. And for people who don't know, these are different rooms in the main church campus.
The sanctuary where the main video was taken, and where a lot of it happened, is considered the old section of the building. There was another section added on that included Hebrews, the bookstore,
great room,
East West, great room, and the upper room, and all that. So that's all on a different. How
good were the cameras back then? They weren't doing 4K.
No, they weren't doing 4K. I don't think they were. I think
were they doing 1080p? Yeah.
Yeah, 1080. I'm pretty sure is what we were doing, but I don't.
So maybe some of that footage that's online was 1080p.
Maybe, yeah.
Because some of it's cell phone footage, obviously.
Yeah, some of it got uploaded to
people in the crowd.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much, Bill wanted every camera, every bit of video that was being taken on any camera to be saved and archived.
Okay.
So technically, I'd have to go back and look and see if that really happened. Who do you think has access
to that today?
What's that?
Who do you think has access to that?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Because I've thought about reaching out to those guys, like, hey man, can I get some your best clips of it so I can see, instead of the sketch stuff we see online.
Yeah, and Bill wanted all that kept for accountability for anything, not just for the glory, because that was way before the glory cloud even happened. So, the so-called glory cloud.
So it's going on. It happens. You're not there the first time, second time.
No,
but you are there. Tell us what happens when you see it.
Well, because the reason why I wasn't there is because we're usually first to come and last to go.
We're here all the time.
We're here all the time working, and in the evening service, I didn't usually stay for evening service. I usually
tired of being at church. I get it.
I'd go home, take my get in my jammies or whatever, get in something more comfortable, and then somebody inevitably texts, "Oh, the glory cloud's happening, man," and I'd be like, I missed it again. So the last time when I finally went there, I just finally said, I'm going back. So I told Marlene, I said, I'm going to head back over to the church. I've got to see this for myself.
Okay.
Because, I'd heard a lot of stuff about it.
Do you remember when? Fall, summer, springtime?
I don't.
But a Sunday night service in the sanctuary.
I believe it was a Sunday night service in the sanctuary, yes.
Okay.
It had to have been.
Okay.
Because that's the only nighttime service. We had a Friday
we had
service.
Friday night back then too.
Yeah, it could have been a Friday.
Okay. So it's a Friday or a Sunday night service, and you're coming back, you're already ready to like hit the sack, but you're like, I got to show up.
I got to go look at this firsthand. I wanted to see it with my own eyes.
Wait a minute. There's usually worship, and then there's preaching, and then sometimes worship at the end.
Yeah.
Is this worship at the beginning? Is this during preaching when you show up? When do you get there?
Again, that's another detail I don't really remember. I just know that Bill was on the stage, so he probably was in the middle of preaching or at the end of his preaching or something.
Okay.
Because when I came in, I snuck in the back door of the stage.
Oh, so you went on the back end of the stage, okay.
Yeah, and I poked my head out and could see everybody's just standing around at this point. So it must have been pretty much over with, because Bill wouldn't allow it to... I don't think he would have allowed it to completely hijack the message. So my guess is he was preaching and felt that...
It's a toss-up with Bill, though.
Yeah, it's hard to say with him sometimes, but... So I see him just kind of standing there watching, so I just walk out there.
To
Bill, and we just stand there and start talking, and
what do you
just
say?
Watched it. Well...
I mean, if you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to say it. I'm just curious.
Yeah. I know one thing is he had told me that it had actually started in the upper room years ago. It just kind of gave me a little brief history, like it wasn't...
Years ago?
Well, he said years ago. I don't know what that means.
Wow. Okay.
At least that's what I think he said.
Right, so,
and I might be wrong about that.
All right, so if we're in the back of the sanctuary and we're looking at the stage, where is this cloud at that time when you got there?
Well, stuff was happening all over in the room, but it seemed like a lot of it was in that same pocket or area.
So if you're
it
looking
would
at
be stage left.
Stage left.
Which means if you're standing on stage, it'd be to your left.
Okay, up in the
ceiling,
air, and it's like a 25, 30-foot ceiling, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Okay. How big is it? Is the cloud, like, would it fill the space you're sitting in right now? Or is it bigger than that, smaller than that?
This particular time, it was kind of, it wasn't as, because they had more of the lights on for one. You couldn't see, you could see it, but it just didn't seem as, like when the lights were off and it was just the spotlighting kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It didn't seem as prevalent, but it was obviously doing interesting stuff and moving. You could see enough of it to see it moving.
How was
around.
it moving? That was interesting.
It would go up, it would go down to some extent, but left and right, it seemed almost like it was alive. It felt like it had a life of its own. It was really weird that way.
Okay. Now, I'm really familiar with the vents up there because I clean them.
Yep.
As a janitor forever there. I've been up on the scissor lift and I've cleaned them, vacuumed all the dust off them. I've been up there adjusting the angle of the vents as much as you can because they don't have a huge range of motion.
Right. And I'm familiar with you guys going up and doing the cleaning.
Do you think that it could be, let's say dust. I know there's not much dust up there because we go up twice a year to dust it. Could it be dust? Could it be something somebody put in the vents?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So you think it could be something in the vents?
Well, I thought at that time it could be. I thought it could be something disintegrating in the air conditioning units.
Did it look like it was coming out where the vents have the outflow?
I couldn't tell where it was coming from. Okay. I just know that it was flying around the room.
Okay.
And it seemed to go contrary to, like they talk about the returns and the ones that actually push out air. It would seem to go against the air currents.
Because there's 4 main HVACs in that room. I think there's more than 4 main vents, but it's like 4 corners, like like quadrants in that sanctuary.
Yeah.
So, okay. So how did you feel? Did you feel, because a lot of people say, they look at the videos and they think everybody's acting super irreverent. Did you feel an unusual presence of God? Did you feel nothing? What was going on for you in that realm?
Well, oftentimes in our meetings, I feel some presence of God, but I'm not a real big feeler that way in a sense.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not like, I am a feeler, but I don't always pay attention, in a sense of, gosh, how would you even say that? At that moment, I think I was more intrigued by what was going on with that cloud personally.
Uh-huh.
So other people being reverent, I guess you could say, because
Okay.
some people were in awe of that. Some were praying, some were worshiping. A lot of them were having fun, you know, and just watching it, and you know, a lot of exclamations when it would do certain things. You know, the whole crowd would, whoa, you know, and stuff like that. Because it was just doing stuff that you wouldn't expect of just a swirling dust cloud, in a sense.
Okay. Do you think it could have been, from what you saw, let's say I threw a bag of glitter in the vent, so when the AC comes on, start blowing glitter out the vents, could it have been glitter?
Well, obviously it could have been. I mean, it could be anything like that, but for the fact that it didn't do, you know, I've seen a lot of that kind of stuff, and it creates swirls, you know, and you can tell that it's being pushed by air. This seemed more like it had its own life.
Well,
it didn't swirl the same way. It was.
I vacuumed that floor after meetings, right? And I vacuumed up glitter because it's one of the policies at Bethel. You cannot use glitter because it's annoying as heck to clean up.
That and red dye.
But yeah, well, red dye,
Anything
yeah.
with red dye in it.
But they have a size to them. I don't know what the size of the glitter is, but it has a spec, right? And you've got it on your skin. It's kind of, sometimes it'll stick to you. It's hard to get off.
Right.
This stuff
is not the same.
had to been, if it was there, it had to be like so much finer. If it was, because I can see glitter on the carpet, I could pick up a speck. I never had that ability once in that room when I vacuumed. And that wasn't me vacuuming every night that it ever happened there. But I've definitely have been in there, and I was paying attention, looking like, is my bag gonna be full of dust then tonight? You know, like, and I didn't see anything like that ever.
Yeah,
I don't
and
know.
we, the first thing that happened in respect to actually looking at it was, well, first off, people wouldn't say they could find it afterwards.
Yep.
But for some reason later on, we're starting to find it in the chairs and on the carpet.
So you collected some.
Yeah, well, the first person to collect something was a father of two of my wife's students that she had in BSSM.
And he collected off chairs?
No, he collected it off a shoe.
Okay.
Because it actually gotten on his shoes, I think.
Okay, so he was at the meeting, he
Yeah.
got on his shoes, he collected some off his shoes.
And then he took it, he actually worked for a company, which I won't name. But he was a meteorologist.
Okay.
So his thing was metals, right?
Yeah, not a meteorologist.
I can't even say the word properly. It messes with my mouth. But he had access to a scanning electron microscope, which is we call it SEM. And scanning electron microscope can do an analysis of different materials and tell you what the makeup is. It actually gives you a graphical representation of based on the amount of specific materials in whatever you're studying.
So he tested it.
So he tested it, and it gave him a very specific spike on the graph that was similar to, as he said, mica.
Okay.
Now, I'd already looked at it. By that time, I'd already looked at it. I think I had gathered samples before then. I don't remember if it was before or after him. I think it was before him, actually, and I have a digital microscope that actually has calipers and stuff on it, and I looked at it. It looked very similar to mica to me, and most of the particles were averaging anywhere from about 10 to 20 microns in size, which is very, very small, tiny.
Okay.
To give you an example of what that's like, a smoke particle on average is about 5 microns in size.
Okay, 2 to 4 times the size of a smoke particle.
So, but there were occasionally an anomalous particle that looked octagon in shape, or hexagonal in shape, I'm sorry, and were about 200 microns
So
across.
a little bigger than
So, but those were not very common.
Okay.
But again, mica cleaves. What they call cleave is when you would strike a mineral or you go to break it off. Sometimes they call it cleaving. It'll break off in hexagons, from my understanding. And so that also was kind of pointing towards it could be something like mica. But when he looked at it on the electron scanning electron microscope, it didn't have the exact signature. And he's not a mineralogist. and doesn't know the mineralogy database as well as a mineralogist would. So he was wanting to always try to get somebody who knew the database better in that category to tell him, yeah, this is, it can vary this much on either side of that to, all these things they're seeing on there and still be mica or not, because he just didn't know.
Okay.
Now, my contention was that it wouldn't matter if it's peanut butters and monkeys. God can manifest anything he wants to as a glory cloud.
Yep.
If, it's a so-called glory cloud. But again, now, because I'm thinking, in my mind, the way I think, I'm thinking like natural things to try to rule out everything, because I don't want to think something's from God and find out it's something natural.
Yeah, no one wants to be oohing on at glitter in the sky because somebody threw a bad glitter up in the air.
Exactly, or to be deceived by somebody who's being, in a sense, kind of nefarious toward.
Yeah, somebody in the crowd that's trying to draw attention to himself or something like that. So they're trying to fake it.
So that's why I was going to do my due diligence to try to rule out anything.
Well, let me back up real fast. From what you know about Bethel.
Yeah.
Right. Is there any chance what are the likelihoods somebody on staff or the upper echelons of leadership conspiring to make this happen?
I would be shocked if somebody up there did something like that.
Well, I think it's ridiculous.
I mean, you can't.
Bill doesn't even know how the air conditioner system works.
No, I understand, but you can't rule out that. Yeah, you could have a rogue person on your team, but knowing the character of these people, I would find that absolutely
you can't
shocking.
even. The sanctuary is used like almost 24/7, literally. It's not like a normal church. To get the scissor lift in the building, to get up to the vents where you could put the glitter in somewhere, you can't just do that.
Or even to get on the roof, because
the roof's behind locked doors.
It's behind locked doors, but also, if you're up on that roof, anytime anybody's on that roof and you're in the sanctuary, you hear them walking, no matter how quiet they are.
Yeah. So I was trying to rule that out. It's the likelihood of Bill or Chris conspiring with maintenance team that know how to even get this done.
Yeah.
And the logistics to get a scissor lift in the building because they don't fit through the doors. You have to take out the post and all the pain in the butt that would be.
Well, and
unlikely.
And the fact too that they're both the ones that are saying don't just focus on this thing. That was the one time I ever saw Bill stop and just stand there and watch it, was when I went there that last time. All the other times he's like, it's a sign and a wonder. Signs point to something greater than themselves. So we don't want you. We shouldn't sit there and stare at the sign. Yeah, we're going to for a period of time when it first happens, because it draws your attention.
Yeah.
But after that, he didn't want people just showing up to see this glory cloud.
Yeah.
And he didn't want that to be the focus. He wanted God to be the focus. So to do that and then kind of downplay it to the point that Bill did would seem highly unlikely as well. You would think he would embellish it.
Seems not logical to, if you're going to put on this show.
Totally.
And Bill doesn't allow fog machines. Bethel Music will use them sometimes in their
Bethel
conferences.
Music and Jesus Culture did.
I've seen Bill stop the production guys, we're not doing fog machines.
Yeah.
We're not doing it on services.
And fog machines are an oil anyway. It's not a particulate.
But if you're just viewing this on YouTube, you might get
is.
confused. You might be like, well, it's a fog machine.
Totally.
Oh, that's glitter.
Totally.
If you're not there and you're just looking on YouTube.
Yeah.
So,
and again, if it's a smoke created by oil, I would imagine the particulate size would be very similar to a cigarette smoke.
What about somebody in the crowd
microns.
doing this? Could somebody in the crowd have manufactured this?
Well, that was the other thing I thought of, because we do have some pretty strange people that show up at our church.
For sure.
Some claiming to be very, hyper spiritual. They want people to notice them.
They want to be the next prophet that tells everybody how to live.
I even had one at that time that I dealt with who was less than honorable, that had made claims to people that when he shows up different places, stuff follows him and shows up around him and everything. So I thought, again, with my police background and all the con men I've dealt with, I'm thinking even, is a possibility that he could, because you can get mica in bulk. You can buy it in bulk. And you can also get these magician pins. They're spring-loaded little. Some people call them cannons. They look like a pin, where you can secrete glitter into the air.
Okay.
Just boom and pop it in the air, And I thought, somebody could be doing something like that. And
let me ask this. I'm thinking the volume in a pen is smaller than the volume of what you saw in the air. Is that true or not true?
Yeah, but you could secrete, if you did it enough times, you could secrete enough
Like
into
how
the
many
air.
times?
I don't know.
10 times? 100 times?
I mean, think about how small the mica particles are to begin with, and if you're shooting them into the air, they could, especially the force of shooting them into the air could break them up even more, and you could end up with even more. But I don't know. I
don't know, because I've heard some people describe, because I never saw a glory cloud, but I've heard people describe like starting as what feels like a 15 by 15 foot cube room of space of cloud, and then it's in the whole entire room.
Which you see that on the one video, you can kind of see that happen where it's more compact.
So it just seems like a lot to fill the entire sanctuary. We can see
it would be a lot.
960 people-ish.
But
to fill that whole room is insane with a pen.
Not knowing how much, because a little bit of mica goes a long ways from what I understand, but...
We should get some and test it.
I know, we should. But then we don't want to test it in our building, because people would accuse us of having done it. But I know that I still wanted to make sure, because I watched a lot of the videos over again, and I watched the crowd instead of the cloud.
Yeah.
And I didn't see anybody doing anything, and I was looking particularly
and this
in
is
the
where
area
your cop background comes in, right?
What's that?
And this is where your cop background comes into play.
Because I want to rule out anything that's natural or...
And people do shady stuff.
They do shady stuff all the time. So anyway, I watched the videos. We had a camera for security that would pan, tilt, zoom camera. I scanned the area and just kind of watched the crowd with that. At one point, I think back then I still had my VPN, so I could do that remotely. I just don't remember how I did that. But anyway.
So you didn't see anybody in the crowd that you could pin it on?
Not that I could pin it on.
Don't think it's leadership?
No, because usually if somebody's acting odd, they stand out like a sore thumb.
Okay.
Right? So, if they're not engaging in what's going on, or they're watching everybody else to make sure they're not getting seen, doing whatever they're doing, they're going to stand out like a sore thumb. And I didn't see anything like that. Not to say it still couldn't have happened. I may just have missed it, or the camera wasn't on them at the time.
So what percentage would you give that this is not like a man-made event? Would you say that it's man-made? Would you say it's supernatural? What would you say?
I lean more towards something supernatural just because of the way it moved.
Like how much so? Like you're 90% confident, 100%, 10%?
I don't know. I don't know how much percent.
But more so, you're over 50.
Yeah, I'm over 50.
Okay.
Just because of the way it moved.
Okay.
The way some of it manifested, it just didn't seem right.
All right, so if it is, we got options, what it is, who knows why? Maybe we just avoid the why, but is it, some people say let's say it is real and there's a critic out there. Are they thinking it's a demon? It's just a natural phenomenon? It's an angel? It's God? It's the Shekinah glory? What do you think if it is? Is it just it's none of the above, it's just a sign, it's just random?
Yeah, I think it's just, sometimes I think God wants to emphasize a moment.
Okay.
And he's saying, hey, I'm here with you, or it's like sometimes in the Bible when God do stuff, it'd be like, be not afraid kind of thing, or be encouraged, or who knows what it could be for,
Okay.
I don't know. I just know that it brought some people to a more contemplative place about how God does stuff. And
I think that's for certain. Everybody was trying to think through it.
And it really, those kind of moments really kind of clarify who are the ones acting as the temple police, the religious ones, because they're immediately going to start shooting stuff like that down without any proof one way or the other.
Yeah.
And so it kind of separates the two groups. And
I know the one thing I saw was some people who didn't see it at first, but then they did see it. And obviously I didn't talk to every single person, but the people I do talk to are usually staff at Bethel and been here for a while. And not that they didn't believe in God, because they believed in God, but something in it made God seem so much more real to them.
Right.
Regardless of what it really was,
Yeah.
the end result for those people was God became so much more real to them.
Yeah.
And I don't think you have to have experience for that for God to be real to you.
No.
I'm just saying, what happened with the few people I talked to is I heard that numerous times, like they were just so certain of the reality of God after having seen that stuff.
Yeah, and everybody acted differently. I mean, you had people on their face crying. You had people just on their face in reverence. You had people jumping around playing in it. You had people yelling and screaming at just like, whoa, you know. And so there was just this gamut of responses to it. And I don't know that any one of them were wrong or right, because everybody needs something different, right?
Yeah, and I'm sure some were right and some were wrong. Like,
yeah, I mean, you're always going to have the ones that
there's always immature people in your midst.
Always.
You're never going to get away from that.
Yeah, but again, the main thing we wanted to do was just our due diligence to rule out anything natural or suspicious in a sense, or deceptive. So, you know, we went up on the scissor lift inside and looked in all the ducting as well.
It's so unlikely to me from having done that so many times.
Also, a good friend of mine, Brian, was a HVAC guy with Johnson Controls, and we got permission to go up and take all the shrouds off of all the air conditioning units.
So you guys got up on the roof and you looked at all of them.
Yep.
And you didn't find anything, or what did you find?
Well, we did find some material in one of the air conditioning units that goes to that room that had fallen on the heat exchanger and was disintegrating on the heat exchanger. So I took samples of that. And
of the material, because because you're saying whatever that material is, it could have been sucked in the whole system, made it pass, and made all its way into that room and blown out, and possibly could have been. Yeah,
it could, because it's being heated up and it's disintegrating. It very well could have been blown into the room.
Okay.
So we took samples of that. We believed it to be the.
There's one problem with this though.
What?
Is that it's in different rooms, and those HVACs that feed the sanctuary don't feed the great room, and they don't feed the upper room.
Right.
So you would have to find it.
Our main focus right now was just the sanctuary, just where we were currently.
Yeah, I'm just thinking through my own head. Like, even if you did find it, you'd need to find it in all the other HVACs too.
Right, and that's a point we brought up in the report that I did on it. I just made a report just to kind of remember for my own self, and if people asked, sometimes I would give them something to read. But the main thing was we took samples of that.
Yep.
But then we took control samples as well of what we thought that was off of the other part of the same conditioning unit, which we thought it was the insulating material.
Okay.
Which had a silver backing to it.
Okay.
But we also noticed when we handled it that we didn't have any sparklies on our hands, so likely it was not the culprit of
So did you get test results back on that stuff?
Yeah.
What was it?
The material, the only main marker that showed up on both of those materials was that of aluminum. So.
But the stuff off the guy's shoe was closer to mica.
It was closer to mica.
So we got aluminum, and we got a mica, maybe mica, something similar to mica.
Obviously, there's
they don't match.
Some carbon signature in there and some other things. I just don't remember. I'm trying to find those graphs again.
Yeah,
those signatures.
This is like so long ago.
It was. So I'm sure I have them somewhere. I know that Carl will have them because you know he kept all that. I sent most of my stuff off to another lady who was going to actually write it in a form that would be acceptable to the scientific community for the data that we had actually gathered. But so we did the due diligence to get up and go through all those units. That was the only thing we found that was suspicious. Ended up being nothing. I also got the filters out of the all of the units like 2 days after that happened, because it just happened to be right when they do the filter change out.
Because we swap all the filters like twice a year.
I was in the sanctuary looking to pull more material out of the carpet or off. I was just looking around, and I could hear footsteps on the ceiling. So I went up there, and Jim Cash, I think it was up there changing all the filters. I said, "Hey Jim, can I have all these filters?" And he goes, "Yeah, knock yourself out,
weirdo."
So I know, right? Well, I explained to him why.
Oh, that's funny.
And they sat in my office up there in the, you know, when I had the container as an office up on the hill by Heidi's place. And they sat in there forever. I had to kind of walk around them all the time.
Did you ever look at them or what?
I looked at them. You could see sparkling material in them that looked similar to what we were seeing, that kind of had that goldish sheen to it. But I don't know that I ever sent any samples of that particular off the filters into Carl. I'm certain it was the same stuff. So mica is used in all sorts of things. Drywall compounds, paint. It's used in women's makeup
Okay.
You can buy it in bulk, from what I understand. And it used to be used, I don't know if it still is standoff insulators for heating element coils.
Okay.
Or the heating coils and different things, maybe like a toaster or something like that. So we always, that one of the things we were thinking of is maybe it was one of those was disintegrating and it was getting blown into the air or whatever. But again, we're back to that whole idea that we have brand new units on a whole different part of the building, that where this stuff had started happening.
Yeah.
Originally, and
so it'd have to be multiple AC units failing at the same time,
and different manufacturers
Different-
too.
yeah,
They
go on
weren't even the
different-
same
yeah,
manufacturer that made these. And so, and again, we didn't find when we took the shrouds off of everything else, there was nothing that we could see that had gone wrong in those, and we didn't have the sparklies on our hands.
Okay.
Nothing.
That happened with the gold dust or glory cloud. Because that's what you're saying, the sparklies on your hands. The material inside the vents wasn't green.
Yeah, because
sparkling.
I could get it on my hands if I was getting it out of the carpet or something like that.
So it's a different material is the point.
Yeah, it seemed to be. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know. I would think that if it was a material, but my point is if I thought it was any of those materials or anything in those units, you would think that it would get on your hands or on your clothing as you're going in and sticking your head in and grabbing things or taking samples or whatever. And
because you think that'd be the most condensed spot of it, because they'd have to make it all its way through the ducting, getting stuck along the way.
Yeah.
Because those things aren't beautifully clean on the inside. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. But again, you guys clean a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times a year, but I'd see you guys up with
try
the
like twice a
vacuums and
year to
stuff,
get up there and vacuum all the dust out.
because the dust does accumulate. But and back to the whole idea, the bottom line is this stuff looked alive. It looked like it had life in it. That was the difference between. That's the one thing that takes it out of my mind as being, a man caused event with some kind of known substance to being, and again, God could manifest Micah if he wanted to. I mean, that he makes it anyway. It's his genius that puts it in the earth. So it could totally be his genius that threw it into the air. I mean, or whatever happened, or made it come alive, like it actually had some essence of life to it. It was just weird. And that's the one thing, like I was saying, that makes me go from, this logical place to something was supernatural about this.
Yeah.
Or it seems to have been supernatural about it.
Was that the only time you ever saw it, that one time?
Yeah, I think that was the only time, because I wasn't there then. I think the night that they got the really good video of it, and when the room was really dark, I wasn't there.
Okay.
Because like I said, I always missed the.
Yeah, I never
Because I can't
saw
remember
it.
if that one came afterwards and I went back again or what. Because there's so many different times that actually occurred that nobody really.
Yeah, because Bethel has a ton of services.
Yes.
You have Friday night service, you have Sunday
Yeah.
mornings, there's multiple Sunday mornings, there's a Sunday night.
Yeah.
And then they have meetings like for staff and the school
Yeah.
throughout the week. So there's so many opportunities for something to happen. You cannot be at
Services
every
and
meeting.
classes.
You can't be at everything.
Little tiny schools that they put on, and
Conference,
I mean, at
there's
that
just so
time
much
we
stuff.
had over 21 or 27 conferences we did a year, besides all of the other stuff that we did.
Because students are, at this time, they must have been in the sanctuary 4 days a week for teaching and stuff like that. And, well, if they're doing outreach, maybe 3 days. So there's just a lot going on. There's a lot of meetings.
And that brings up another great point. If people were trying to secrete this into the air using some kind of device, they're going to get it on themselves, and they're probably going to get a lot of it on themselves.
That's a good point.
And you're gonna see them walking out with that stuff all over.
Their hands all stained gold.
Yeah, I don't know that of anybody that really, even though we found it on shoes, we found it on chairs and stuff. I don't know of anybody saying, "Oh, I had it all over me." Nobody ever said that.
Yeah.
Because when I told them, "Oh yeah, I extracted some from the carpet or the chairs, or we got some off of some shoes," people are like, "Oh really?" Because they didn't know that it was sticking around.
It was lasting, yeah.
So there's just a lot of odd. Some of it almost seemed contradictory to each other, and yet, I don't know. I just, but I'm one of those guys that I'm not just gonna, sit back and go, okay, I swallowed this whole.
Sure.
You know, I want to make sure that it's not some deceptive thing, or that it's natural, and you know, just some natural occurring thing that, you know, because of something breaking down or whatever. But at the same time, I'm not going to say it's not God, because, you know.
I just think, how do you know? Like, I'm at the point, like, I never saw it, but from everything I've heard and what I know about the building and the facilities and all this stuff, the likelihood of it being in the AC is just so low in my mind.
Yeah.
And I think it was supernatural if you want, but I don't know what it was or what it means
Right.
beyond that. I just don't think man did it. I don't think man created this.
No. I think some of it may have got sucked into the AC through the returns. That's how they got in the filters, but I didn't see it coming out of the AC
Yeah, that just
into
doesn't
the
add
room.
up. Yeah.
And that was one of the other things too, is in observing in a dark room like that, you're not going to see it until it gets into the cone of a light beam.
Yeah.
So
That
it
makes
could
sense.
appear to manifest in that moment,
In one
because you're not
spot.
seeing it.
Yeah, that's a
in
good
the
point.
shadow.
That's a good point.
So that was one of the other things I thought about, and it was when I finally saw it face to face, because I saw similar things happening, even though the room was a lot lighter in that particular instance.
Yeah.
It was that, oh yeah, because, you know, it's just like, you know, I do a lot of nighttime observation because I do astrophotography and astronomy stuff, and I know how deceptive things can be at nighttime and in the dark.
Yeah.
And so you got to learn how to kind of process all that stuff in a way that, you know, you're being, you know, you just not just thinking, oh, it's UFOs, you know, or whatever. Because there's a lot of things that when you're in the dark that can happen to make things appear as though they're moving, for example, when you're moving.
Sure.
Because you're sitting there trying to balance and you don't realize it.
So do you think that's the case with this?
No.
Okay. So
Absolutely
it's not some kind of
no, this was
optical
definitely
illusion.
moving. This was
Okay.
definitely moving around. I'm just using that as an example.
But you
of,
rule out, so you're acknowledging that that's a possibility that can happen to people, but in this case, that is not the case.
No, absolutely
Okay.
not. Yeah, I'm just saying that if you haven't kind of been trained or had experience in observational skills, in a sense, like being a policeman or doing what I do as doing astronomy and stuff, then it's easier to be deceived by things or to think you're seeing something you're not. That's all I'm saying.
That makes sense.
So you have to consider yeah, they have a saying, I think it meant it's the LERPs when they were gathering intelligence over Vietnam, that no data insignificant, meaning everything could be significant to what you're looking for or what you're looking at. So you never rule out even the smallest thing. And evidence gathering is kind of the same way. You've got to be really careful to see everything and to consider everything in that moment and then follow truth.
Yeah.
You know, but you do have to rule things out as well as rule things in. I mean, it's like, you know, so part of that whole process is a process of elimination, or it's a process of just gathering the evidence and sitting on it and waiting to see if something comes from that. You know, you may never use that little insignificant thing, but I've seen super insignificant things completely prove a case.
Yeah.
And things that people wouldn't have thought about before. So, you know, can we say for certain it was a glory cloud?
Yeah.
Well, we can believe that. We can't technically really prove it to anybody.
Yeah, I mean,
And it's just our story until it's not. I mean, until it becomes
what does a
reality.
glory cloud even mean? I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it just became the catchphrase to describe it.
Exactly. Because, you know, like when I wrote my report, what did I say about it? I said at the beginning, I'm writing this in response to the many inquiries into the appearance of a mysterious cloud of unknown origin in the main Bethel sanctuary.
Yeah.
Which was labeled the glory cloud, and I used that name just because it's kind
Yeah,
of
because that's what
everybody knows.
Yeah, that's what
about,
everybody
so.
calls it, but we don't really know.
Yeah, we don't. And
do you have any like final thoughts you want to share, anything like that you would say, conclusions besides anything else?
no, again, it's you know, what is it pointing to? What does it do for the individual? Everybody's going to respond to it differently, and I think that we got to be careful about calling something the devil's that could be God's, you know, and that God actually has caused things to happen. I think I said to you earlier today, I believe a lot of people in the church would run you out of town with pitchforks and sickles if you came to them and told them that you saw a bush that was burning and not being consumed and it was talking to you.
Yeah.
You know, because they just don't think like that anymore. There's so many people in the church that have pushed all that away, and it seems that they're almost fulfilling that scripture about having a form of godliness but denying its power in a sense, because it's like, yeah, God can still do those things. God could still part seas. He can still cause water to come out of a rock, you know, and we have to, if we're going to be his followers, we got to believe that. If you don't, then you're denying the power of God in a sense, and so.
It doesn't mean we are so open-minded that our brains fall out, but like.
Right. No,
And that's why we
totally.
tested like that's why you were looking at the events. Why you want to look at it.
Yeah.
I want to rule out all this stuff because fake stuff does happen.
God
That doesn't mean real stuff doesn't.
Yeah, and God told us to test the spirits.
Yeah.
So what's that look like?
Sure.
It looks like not being a fool. You know, you're not just going to fall for everything. And what is the purpose of that thing? Is it pointing you toward God, or is it pointing you away from God?
Yeah.
And I think that's the real test. If it's pointing you more toward God, then how
That's
can we
a
call it
hard
the
thing to
devil's?
measure for every single person, though. Like, how can I know?
True, I know.
For 900 people in the sanctuary, what they did.
Totally, I
don't know.
get it. I know for me personally, those kind of things make me, you know, I'm just like, I've seen other things that God has done that most people would look at and go, no. You know, and I'm like, they changed my life.
Yeah.
You know, in a good way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jerry.
Yep.
Appreciate it, man.
Hopefully that's helpful to some people.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm sure some people will hate it, but.
But then again,
You never know.